In the last video of this three-part video series about environmentalism in motorsport, I went through the recent developments concerning the topic, starting with the first experiments with electric powertrains and hill climbing starting in the early 1980s, through increased efforts to reduce the carbon footprint of racing through the use of alternative fuels and hybrid technology starting in the mid-2000s, and ending with the establishment of the first conventional all-electric racing championships and events like Formula E, for example. I would really recommend you watch that video first before you return to watch this video, but you should have no problems understanding this video if you haven't watched the second part. In this part, I'll talk about planned and upcoming all-electric racing championships that have already been announced. Right now, a couple of new all-electric racing championships are planned to start in the immediate future, and many already existing championships are currently planning to switch to being at least partially electric soon. All information presented in this part is current as of early August 2020. First, let's talk about the existing championships planning to make the switch. Back in June 2018, the FIA World Motorsport Council approved a plan that would see the FIA World Rallycross Championship become all-electric this year. A perfect fit in my opinion, since rallycross events tend to be fairly short, and thus the biggest drawback of electric cars, their comparatively limited range, would not be an issue. Furthermore, the incredible amount of instant torque typically produced by electric motors, and the ability to have independent four-wheel drive using one electric motor per wheel could also prove very advantageous. The chassis and the battery would both be spec parts produced by Orica and Williams Advanced Engineering respectively. The FIA said they were closely working with manufacturers to get them committed to the plan, but in the end, things didn't quite work out. In August of that same year, a mere 2 months after the announcement, the plans were postponed to 2021 because the deadline of August 15th had come and gone without any manufacturers signing up. A new deadline of March 29th, 2019 was set to, quote, allow optimal time for all manufacturers investigating the possibility of competing to develop their plans. However, after prospective manufacturers Peugeot, Volkswagen, Audi and Ford failed to meet the new deadline as well, the initial plans were scratched, and a new, quote, revised roadmap for electrification of the FIA World Rallycross Championship in 2021 was announced at the 2019 FIA World Motorsport Council meeting in Paris. According to the new roadmap, starting with the 2021 season, the series is supposed to have both electric-powered cars and combustion engine-powered cars competing against each other for at least 1 year. In this new plan, private teams would retrofit current WRX supercars with spec powertrains and battery kits featuring electric motors producing between 536 and 670 horsepower. An all-electric feeder series called FIA Junior ERX would also be set up. At the 2019 Latvian WRX round, it was announced that the new series will be called Projekt E, and Austrian firm Stahl Advanced Research and Development, or START for short, who will provide the powertrain kits for the new series, unveiled the first Projekt E car. The kits would cost 194,000 euros each, but there would also be an initiative to have teams supply their motors from electric road cars with bespoke single-spec motor controllers used to equalize the different motors. Currently, the new Projekt E cars are supposed to be run at 4 rounds of the 2020 World Rallycross Championship in Sweden, Latvia, Belgium and Germany. At that same June 2019 FIA World Motorsport Council meeting, where the revised roadmap for electrifying the WRX was announced, a similar plan was announced for the World Rally Championship as well. It was announced that starting with the 2022 season, the new World Rally Championship technical regulations will call for hybrid electric powertrains. At first, the supplementary hybrid system will be composed of spec parts, but starting in 2025, manufacturers could potentially be allowed to develop their own more involved systems. According to a March 2020 press release by WRC, the ICE part of the power plant will remain largely unchanged when the new regulations roll around in 2022. In another June 2020 press release, the WRC called the upcoming technical regulation change the biggest since the arrival of Group A in 1987. The press release also revealed additional details about the spec hybrid system to be used. The electric motor, power electronics and drive system will be supplied by German company Compact Dynamics, while the battery, capable of delivering 130 brake horsepower when fully charged, will be supplied by Chrysler Electrics. As of right now, unlike with the proposal to make the WRX all-electric, things are apparently going according to plan with this one. Over in the States, in January of this year, IMSA announced plans to replace DPI, the current top class of its WeatherTech United Sports Car Championship, with a new class called LMDh that will reportedly feature a cursor-like system. In a convergence between IMSA and the ACO, these cars will be allowed to compete in WEC events as well, while the WEC's new hypercars will be allowed in IMSA races. In many ways, the new class will be very similar to the current DPI class. The same four chassis constructors, Multimatic, Ligier, Orica and Alara, will make the chassis for the new LMDh class cars. As it's the case with DPI, manufacturers are then supposed to equip the cars with custom bodywork akin to their road cars and their own engines. In early May of this year, it was announced that a first version of the regulations had been sent to interested manufacturers as well as the four chassis makers tasked with building the chassis. The announcement also confirmed that the new LMDh cars will be based on next generation's LMP2 cars. A single source or spec rear axle hybrid system will be mandatory and only one aerodynamic configuration will be allowed per car. The minimum weight will be set at 1030 kilograms and the maximum power output of the entire power unit will be 675 brake horsepower. The convergence was also confirmed and balance of performance is supposed to ensure that LMDh cars and hypercars can compete on equal footing. The introduction of the new class is still planned for 2022 with a minimum lifespan of 5 years. However, it was also mentioned that the introduction may need to be delayed in light of the COVID pandemic. ACO President Pierre Filon said that the convergence would be a dream come true for many manufacturers, while IMSA CEO Ed Bennett said that the new LMDh cars were going to revolutionize the top category of premier sports car racing around the globe. Indycar will also go hybrid in 2022 with the introduction of a single-source hybrid system. The new hybrid system will function similar to cars, recovering energy from the brake system that would otherwise be lost. It will be integrated into Indycar's push-to-pass system that allows the driver to get extra power on demand for 200 seconds per race, boosting the total power output of the engine to Indycar's target of 900 brake horsepower. According to Indycar, the new system will also have safety benefits, since the electric motor will allow the driver to restart the car from the cockpit, doing away with the traditional handheld manual starters. The AMR safety team will no longer have to go out to restart spun cars every time a driver doesn't manage to keep the engine running. This would not only reduce the number of dangerous situations involving safety team members, but could potentially also reduce the number of cautions, improving the fan experience. The only downside is that the introduction of the hybrid system will push next generation's cars and engines back to 2022. Recently, IndyCar President Jack Fry had suggested, however, that because of the COVID-19 pandemic, it could become necessary to split the introduction of the new hybrid system from the introduction of the new engines. However, Ted Klaus, president of Honda Performance Engineering, has already criticized this proposal, saying that it wouldn't be logical to introduce the two one after the other, since they are both part of the same power unit. 2022 seems to be some sort of magic year for electric motorsport, as German touring car championship DTM is also eyeing up a single supplier hybrid system for 2022. Only a short time ago, DTM boss Gerhard Berger had said that in his opinion hybrid is nothing more than a marketing gimmick. Now even he admits it has pretty much become a requirement for car manufacturers inside and outside DTM. BMW Motorsport boss Jens Marquardt also said that hybridization had been considered as early as 2012, adding that it is an important factor in BMW continuing in the DTM. Besides, DTM has also begun testing synthetic fuels at the 2019 season finale at Hockenheim in a push for more sustainable technology. According to Audi, the synthetic fuel tested had reduced carbon emissions by as much as 30%. Also coming from DTM is a wild, futuristic vision for an electric and hydrogen-powered touring car series that according to DTM was at least well received. However, all of this may come too late, as recently Gerhard Berger admitted for the first time that the end may be near for DTM. The demise of the DTM started in 2018 when Mercedes decided to exit the series in favor of Formula E. This year, the series received another major blow when Audi announced they would leave the championship at the end of the current season, citing the coronavirus pandemic as one of the reasons. This came only months after R Motorsport Aston Martin announced they would be leaving the series as well. This leaves BMW as the sole manufacturer involved, and even their future participation is not secured. If the DTM were to survive, it's likely that it will switch to a GT3-based formula, Berger says. In August of 2018, TOCA, the organizer of the British Touring Car Championship, announced a future move to hybrid technology. A year later, in July of 2019, TOCA then announced that Cosworth would supply the series with low-cost hybrid systems starting in 2022. This made the British Touring Car Championship the first major touring car championship in the world to not only announce the move to hybrid but also have a solid plan in place covering the who, what and where aspects. The new system will be a lot like IndyCar's push-to-pass system, but less restrictive, allowing the driver to access an additional 40 horsepower for 15 seconds per lap for attacking and defending. Finally, let's address the elephant in the room, Formula One. On November 12, 2019, Formula One issued a press release announcing its plan to have net zero carbon emissions by 2030. According to the press release, the plan is the result of 12 months of intense work with the FIA, sustainability experts, Formula One teams, promoters and partners that resulted in an ambitious yet achievable delivery plan. The plan will not only cover the cars, but all aspects of the sport, including logistics. And carbon emission reduction projects will begin immediately to start the journey of becoming a more sustainable sport. So let's go through the press release bit by bit. The most obvious thing that needs fixing is the car, right? The first solution that comes to mind is going electric, but that's not what they're going to do. F1 wants to use synthetic fuels and biofuels to achieve their goal, and they laid out all of the juicy details in a press release the day after. While I'm about to present you the most basic information from said press release, it's very long and complex, so I do recommend you read it yourself if you are interested. As it's the case with all sources, you can find the press release in the pastebin document linked in the description. In order to become carbon neutral until 2030, they are intending to use sustainably sourced synthetic fuels or biofuels combined with engines that are even more efficient than those already in use. I would really like to go into greater detail about this, but this video is already getting way too long, and I could make an entire video just about Formula One's plans. Thus, I'm only going to answer two basic questions. Number one, what is synthetic fuel? Synthetic fuel is fuel, in this case liquid fuel, that was made in a laboratory from something called syngas. Syngas is a mixture of carbon monoxide and hydrogen, usually obtained by gasifying either biomass or coal, or by reforming natural gas. Although specifically the carbon can be obtained by siphoning it directly from the air through carbon capture, something F1 is very enthusiastic about. Number two, why don't go electric? Simply put, in the current state of affairs, electric cars almost never have net zero carbon emissions. They don't directly introduce greenhouse gases into the atmosphere through their exhausts, but somewhere along the line greenhouse gases were still emitted, either during the production of the electricity needed to charge the battery or during the manufacturing of the battery itself. F1's plans don't stop there, and the championship will immediately start working towards making both logistics and travel as efficiently as possible. By 2030, all offices, facilities and factories of both F1 itself and the teams are supposed to be powered entirely by renewable energy. As soon as 2025, they want to ensure that all of the Grand Prix events themselves are sustainable. There are two aspects to this. First of all, they want to eliminate single-use plastic bags and make sure that the waste that is produced is either recycled, reused, or composted. Secondly, F1 wants its fans to be able to reach the event sustainably. F1 will not only make sure that fans can reach the event sustainably, but also that fans are incentivized to actually do it. Because this video isn't already long enough, here are some quotes about this. First by Formula One CEO and Chairman Chase Carey, and then by FIA President John Todd. In launching F1's first ever sustainability strategy, we recognize the critical role that all organizations must play in tackling this global issue. And the FIA welcomes this Formula One initiative. It's not only very encouraging for the future of motorsport, but it could also have strong benefits for society as a whole. In January of this year, F1 and the FIA formally committed themselves to their plans by signing the United Nations Sports for Climate Action Framework. Now let's talk about the planned championships, and there are also quite a couple that I want to talk about. First, there is Extreme E, an off-road racing championship that is the brainchild of 2003 Indianapolis 500 winner Gilles de Ferran and Formula E co-founder Alejandro Agag. The series describes itself as somewhat of an electric version of the Rally Dakar and was originally supposed to race at 5 locations in the Arctic, the Himalayas, the Sahara Desert, the Amazon rainforest, and on islands in the Indian Ocean. The Indian Ocean location didn't go through, however, and was replaced on the final calendar by a round at Lake Redbar, Senegal to represent the ocean. According to the press release announcing the championship, all of these locations have two things in common. One, they possess immense natural beauty, and second, they are all facing some sort of man-made environmental threat. Extreme E's organizers want to bring attention to these threats, namely melting ice caps, deforestation, desertification, retreating mountain glaciers, plastic pollution, and rising sea levels, while also highlighting the natural beauty of the places a race-out. The format will consist of a series of head-to-heads over stages approximately 5 miles long, with a round-robin group stage leading to knockout tournament to decide the event winner. All teams will utilize the same Spark Odyssey 21 Extreme E SUV made by Spark Racing Technology. The vehicle weighs 1,650 kilograms, 3,640 pounds, and is capable of accelerating from 0 to 60 in 4.5 seconds with 536 brake horsepower. The organizers are apparently consulting with experts to keep the championship's own environmental impact on site at a minimum. In order to further reduce the environmental footprint of the championship, Extreme E is collaborating with AFC Energy to use its pioneering hydrogen fuel cell technology to enable its race fleet to be charged using zero carbon emission energy. In March of 2018, the global TCR promoter WSC Limited announced plans for an all-electric touring car series called ETCR. In February 2020, the series took on a new pure ETCR moniker when it was formally launched by promoter Eurosport Events. All cars will use Williams Advanced Engineering powertrains for at least the first 2 or 3 years of the championship. After that, manufacturers will probably be allowed to deploy their own powertrains. Until then, the manufacturers will only supply the exterior bodywork. The initial powertrain will develop 680 horsepower, enough to accelerate the 1,575 kilogram machines from 0 to 60 in 3.2 seconds. The battery will reportedly be able to last 41 kilometers, enough for 20-minute long races equivalent to WTCR's race format. The championship was supposed to have a 2020-2021 demonstration season, a time trial at this year's Goodwood Festival of Speed, and an event at the Daytona 24 Hours of 2021. But because of a certain virus, things wouldn't go quite according to plan. In July then, a Europe-focused calendar for this demonstration season was revealed. The calendar, starting on October the 9th, would take the series to Copenhagen, Goodwood, Motorland, Aragon, and Adria Raceway. All manufacturers will be present at the event. This is welcome news, as just 2 months prior, in May, championship founder and TCR architect Marcello Lotti couldn't ensure Motorsport.com that all manufacturers would be ready in time due to constraints introduced by the pandemic. These manufacturers would be Seat, Alfa Romeo, Hyundai, plus 2 more manufacturers whose commitment isn't public yet. In 2021, there is another promotional event planned at the 2021 24 Hours of Daytona. After that, the plan is to hold an 8-race season in 2021 with half of the races in Europe and the other half outside of Europe. Regional championships are planned to commence in 2022. Before I finally come to the conclusion, I want to talk about one more championship. In March of last year, the Electric Racing Academy Championship announced the summer 2020 launch of an all-electric entry-level Formula Racing Championship in partnership with Dome. The car, made by Japanese chassis maker Dome, was to have a 170 horsepower electric motor, 24 kilowatt-hour battery, and custom-designed safety features. There would be 2 classes, a sports class where teams will compete in the standard race car, and an innovation class where teams would be allowed to develop their own powertrain and energy storage system within championship regulations. A calendar was to be announced in Q4 of 2019, but I couldn't find such an announcement anywhere on their website. Just a couple of vague statements about circuits in Belgium, the Netherlands, and UK. After a lot of digging, I found a Race Fans article from January 2020 naming the locations of the events. There would be 4 doubleheader rounds, 2 at Zolder and 1 each at Zandvoort and Brands Hatch. But I was still missing dates, and I knew that all of that could be subject to change because of the COVID-19 pandemic, so I kept digging, but I came up empty. So I decided to contact them directly, hoping they would respond quickly, but they didn't. Oh well. So what's my conclusion then? Well, I'm gonna do something very uncharacteristic for me and have a rather positive outlook. See, I usually call myself a realist, but let's be honest, only pessimists who don't want to admit to themselves that they are pessimists call themselves realists. I think that as the world very slowly, maybe too slow, but that's a story for another day, but surely moves towards a greener future, racing leagues across the world will have no choice but to introduce some kind of hybrid system at least to cater to the changing needs of automakers. Heck, I don't even have to grab this out of thin air. Gerhard Berger, an undoubtable petrolhead who just a short while ago called hybrid nothing more than a gimmick, recently had to admit that it's becoming a necessity for automakers. Never has this been more apparent than when just recently feckin' VW of all companies decided to focus on electric motorsport. In conclusion, while progress towards complete sustainability is arguably not happening fast enough in motor racing, that's pretty much the case everywhere across the board. During my research for this video, I was indeed positively surprised by how much is already being done and how many championships are planning moves to improve their carbon footprint in one way or another. I hope that those companies who are currently not planning such moves will start doing so soon, despite the recent economic downturn as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, because time is really running out and it is super important that all of us act as soon as possible to mitigate the potentially catastrophic consequences of climate change as much as possible. I want to end this video with a quote by VW Motorsport director Sven Smets that in my opinion encapsulates perfectly why motorsport needs to embrace a sustainable future. In this regard, motorsport can be a trailblazer. On the one hand, it serves as a dynamic laboratory for the development of future production cars, and on the other, as a convincing marketing platform to inspire people even more towards electric mobility. I made these videos because sustainability in motorsport is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. And I hope you found this video at least somewhat interesting, because a lot, and I really mean a lot, of hard work has gone into making this. If you indeed found this video interesting, why don't you drop a like, subscribe, and check out some of the other videos on my channel, like the ones on the following end card. Remember, as always, sources and links for further viewing and reading can be found in the pastebin document linked in the description below. And this time the sources are even properly numbered. Anyway, that was it for this video. See ya. BMW Motorsport boss Gerhard Berger allowing the driver to access an additional 40 hours. In July, a Europe-focused calendar for this demonstration calendar was revealed. The car, made by Japanese chassis manufacturer. There would be two classes, a sports car